Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
I try to be a good man, but life keeps beating me down.
Check, check, check.
I never understood that you gotta learn to swim, you're gonna drown. People think I'm riding high, but I feel so low. I try to be a good man, but life keeps beating me down.
It is a beautiful, beautiful Dallas, Texas day. I mean, we had a chaotic start to the weather. I mean, we're talking gray skies in the morning. It's ugly. It's bad vibes here in Dallas, Texas. And now I look out to this window and it's just beautiful, but windy and chaotic, just like the stadium pulse. Ladies and gentlemen, I got there eventually. My name is Tegan Randolph, your host. This is a college football show. We only talk about college football around here. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit of the NFL draft, but that's still in the college football space. You're going to get all the college football content you could ever want. If there was a drinking game of me saying college football, you'd be drunk by now. But we have a jam-packed show for you. It is a beautiful October 28th, 2025. And let me give you the slate for today. Number one, I have a little bit more thoughts on the LSU coaching search. I feel like yesterday, if you did not see yesterday's show, it was a little bit of a mess in terms of trying to collect all of my thoughts about Brian Kelly and LSU. And I have a take about the coaching search. Obviously, as we get closer to the offseason, we're going to have much more information to discuss about this, but there's a certain coaching candidate that I want to speak about. But we'll also talk about what the title of today's show is, and it's not just talking about the two top quarterbacks and who's potentially going to go number one, but for the offensive side of the ball, we're going to be talking about my top player at each position for the upcoming NFL draft. We are about 184 days from the NFL draft, and it is crazy to think all the different things that have changed and how some of the players have stayed consistent, and you'll also see some of the teams or players that I'm a little bit more interested in as they'll get an honorable mention. We'll also break down Texas versus Vanderbilt, which I think is arguably going to be the most intriguing game. I would classify that as a college football playoff game for both of those teams, more specifically with Texas. And then I have some more thoughts about Penn State and their coaching search as we enter our next week of college football. I'm so excited to talk with you guys. With that in mind, a lot of you guys, based on the analytics, view the show, but don't hit the like, the sub, and listen, it's the only thing I'll ever ask from you. You don't see me doing a merch haul here and trying to sell you an idea, a facade. At the end of the day, I'm just asking you to have more college football on your feed. And if you're here watching the show, you might as well click that big red button. It's just food for thought. Let's dive into today's show. Number one, take a moment. Let's get some water. Dan Lanning is not going to be an LSU Tiger. I had a ton of thoughts about the LSU coaching job and Brian Kelly and, even a guy like Nick Saban being in contention for this job and how you have to make a guy like that say no because LSU arguably is a top 5, I would say top 3 job in all of college football. You could make a fair argument it's number 1, but I don't find it likely Dan Lanning ends up leaving Oregon. And it's a unique situation. It's not just like looking at a coach that's successful in the Big Ten, but he has roots to the South and he's going to end up going back to the Southeastern Conference. Although a lot of people have projected that with Dan Lanning, and I understand that and I hear you, but the thing that makes it a little bit more unique is the Phil Knight effect and where college football currently stands. Now, Dan Lanning has communicated plenty of times that he is not interested in leaving Oregon. He's got everything he needs, and frankly, he does. He is a coach at Oregon University that is just full of resources. Their infrastructure is immaculate. Their recruiting is immaculate. The NIL funding is immaculate. Like, it is every box you could check off to go win a national championship, which is the goal for Oregon, though they have never done that in their institution's history. And there's another level of, I guess, urgency that a university will have, especially with an alumni like Phil Knight, to do that for the first time. And if you feel like you have the guy, by all means, you are going to make sure you keep the guy, because it has been seen in Oregon's history that they will finally get a valuable head coach and he ends up leaving. I think of Chip Kelly going to the NFL, and I think of Mario Cristobal leaving for Miami. And I think there is a pent-up frustration within Phil Knight to make sure that if they find the guy, which they do believe Dan Lanning is the guy to do that, to keep him around. And you may say, well, LSU can match the money. Are we 100% sure that they can instantly match the money of Phil freaking Knight? I don't think so. I think LSU just paid out the second largest buyout in college football history. And sure, they are flush with cash, baby, but I do not think they are going to be able to pull Dan Lanning away. And we can even throw in the factors that at the end of the day, it's not like traditional college football where you need to be surrounded within a hotbed of high school recruiting. It's a plus. It's nice to have. But if Oregon wants to go get a 5-star out of Florida, if they want to go get a 5-star out of New Mexico, if they want to get a 5-star out of freaking Maine, they can go get them. The state to state, I guess, regionality of recruiting is not as impactful as it once was. It's a nice to have. It's not a need to have like it used to be a lot of times when talking about coaching searches. You have everything you could want. You have the conference that about 50% of the college football public would argue is better than the SEC. And unless Dan Lanning really wanted to be in the South, he really wanted to be there, I could make an argument that he would have just gone for the Alabama job that was open not too long ago, that I know for a fact had interest in Dan Lanning. And if it was all about him going to the South, I think he would have jumped on that, even if it was following up Nick Saban. A competitor like that would be open to a challenge like that. So LSU fans, I really do not believe you guys are going to be able to pull a Dan Lanning. I think it's as likely as you getting Nick Saban. I think Marcus Freeman, John Summerall, Lane Kiffin. Any other ideas? Kenny Dillingham and Clark Lee. Those are, I think, the 5 that you're going to hear the most. I think those are the 5 that are most likely for LSU. And if you asked me to rank them, I'd tell you no, because it's going to be difficult. We're too early in the process. A decision like this is not going to be made for quite some time, but I would say it does hold a lot of other major coaching searches by their marbles, is the nicest way I can put it, because of the weight that the LSU job has. Well, let's get to the topic of today's show. With how this week has gone in terms of prep for the following weekend, it's crazy to think about all the matchups that had potential. Ohio State and Penn State were supposed to be this weekend. If you were to tell me James Franklin got fired midseason, I would have called you crazy. Florida had a ton of potential, and they played Georgia this weekend in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I hope I got that right. There's a lot of potential, not to say there's not good games on. We'll talk about one of them, but I think now would be a perfect time, almost as if it's the Stadium Pulse's bye week, that we take a moment and talk about the NFL draft. The NFL draft is going to arrive quicker than you realize. It always does. Now, we're not going to be talking about the dreaded off season around here, but let's start planting our flags on who is going to be the Stadium Pulse's guys for the NFL draft, as well as get a good picture of who's the number one players at each position, in my opinion. Now, some of this is just going to be straight up chalk, and I completely understand that. But no better way to start than the college football leader in terms of the Heisman race. The best quarterback, I think, for the NFL draft is Ty Simpson. Compared to Fernando Mendoza, these are two high-level quarterbacks that are playing some fantastic football. And I think these two are going to be the top 2 names that really go to head-to-head when we're talking about the combine and all the way up to April. If you really want to go down the Anthony Richardson path, maybe a Lenora Sellers, but I think he's going to be a late first round pick that you stash away for a year and you hope you could develop him. That's if he was to go to the NFL draft. Dante Moore, I think, is a solid quarterback. Now, there's some red flags with him. I clearly do feel like it's going to be Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson. Those are going to be the top two guys that are fighting for the number one overall pick. And with that in mind, what are the differences between the two? Now, Mendoza, I could argue, makes the prettiest deep ball in the entire class with the incredible back shoulder fade. He's highly accurate. I think you could compare Fernando Mendoza to a Jared Goff, a more refined Jared Goff coming out of school. Funny enough, they both went to Cal. Now, in this Indiana offense, he's been highly efficient. He's been incredibly accurate. It does look a little bit more consistent than what we saw against Cal, more for the fact that Indiana's offense is a little bit more on the simplistic side. I think he could run a Kyle Shanahan offense at a very, very high level. But I do think there is some limitations with the Mendoza. His arm talent is pretty good. I think the accuracy is great. There's some questions on whether or not he's as mobile, which goes to the Jared Goff comparison. I think he's a good prospect. And I think if you got him for a franchise quarterback, you'd be pretty happy. And one thing he does have over a guy like Ty Simpson is he's got a couple of years starting. At the end of the day, I think Ty Simpson will be the number one overall pick this upcoming April. I think he's the best quarterback in this draft, and he's playing at an extremely high level. Now, there's a couple of things to note with Ty Simpson. I think the accuracy, the arm talent, and the mobility, the combination isn't like a world beater. I'm not talking about a one-of-one athlete here, but the combination that he has presents a lot of unique challenges. As you are going to be investing a high-level pick to him, I would feel pretty confident about getting a guy like Ty Simpson. Now, one of the cons that I do get a little bit worried about as you begin to evaluate players more and more, especially in my lifetime, I do get a little bit worried about guys that do not have a ton of starts. And he's a first-year starter. And it took him a while to get those starts. Now, I respect the patience. And as someone that has never met Ty Simpson, I don't know his personality. I can respect a guy being someone in this era of college football to stay around and stick it out. And I think he has played incredibly well, knowing that they don't even have a rushing attack at Alabama, knowing the inconsistencies with the offensive line. There's moments of pure brilliance. Now, I'm not going to go as far to say where I've seen some people compare him to like Joe Burrow in terms of the high level QB play that we're seeing. But this is a dude that is just a robot in the pocket, creates, extends, and you just know, even if it's a 3rd and 8, a 3rd and 13, with how well Alabama is playing, that he could go make a play. We saw it all over this Georgia game, and they went on a 4-game stretch of 4 straight ranked opponents, and he did not have the greatest first half against South Carolina this past weekend, but in that second half, when you needed to go get points, he was able to go get the job done. Now, I do think these are going to be two guys that we're going to be comparing a ton. And I do think as of right now, if the draft was tomorrow, I think Ty Simpson is the better quarterback, the better prospect. Is there some red flags with him? Is he a one-of-one talent? No. Is he going to be one of the best number one overall picks that we've seen over the past 20 years? No. But I would feel pretty confident about him being my franchise quarterback, and he'd be worth the number one overall selection. Pardon me, guys. We're getting a little bit of parched, a little dehydrated, if you will. Running back is pretty self-explanatory here. I think Jeremiah Love is the best running back in college football and easily the best prospect coming up for this NFL draft. This dude has everything you could be looking for in a running back prospect: the breakaway speed, the contact balance, the size, the receiving threat. This is one of my favorite prospects in the entire draft. And because he's a running back, he may become a little bit undervalued. And if I'm the Chicago Bears, we don't do a lot of NFL draft talk, and I'm not here to do that. I'm here to talk about the prospects, and maybe we'll talk about their fits down the line. But if I'm the Bears and I got DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monaghan, and I could go get a Jeremiah Love, I would drop a bag to make sure I go get him. He's going to be one of those running backs that transforms a rushing attack. I think he's one that could be the engine of an offense. If you need him to be the bell cow, he can. If you want him to be a complementary back that could go bruise for the first couple of drives, he can go do that. This is a running back that I think should be worth at least a top 15 pick. I really struggle to see some flaws. Now, is there this incredible stop and go agility that you could see from maybe, I don't know, Bijan Robinson and many other kind of compacted running backs? I think Bucky Irving is a great example. No, I think there's some lateral concerns with him, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'm seeing some ridiculous stuff on tape. The hurdles, if there's one thing I would tell him, you don't need to hurdle everybody. It doesn't have to be a hurdle every single time. But Jeremiah Love is a freak athlete, and he's everything you could be asking for in a prospect. For wide receiver, we're going to do two guys just because it tends to be a loaded room. I would say Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State has just absolutely excelled and continued to improve year in, year out. It's unfortunate he's been dealing with injuries. So is Sam Levitt. Arizona State is a very good team. I just think being banged up and losing a guy like Cam Scatabo, which, by the way, hope he's doing well, hope he's doing better. I think Jordan Tyson is everything you could be asking for in a number one wide receiver. He could win on the outside. He could win on the inside. The routes are beautiful. His ability to make plays after the catch. He's everything you could ask for in an X receiver. I think he could be a top 10 pick. I think he's a guy that could transform a passing attack if you have a competent enough quarterback. He's going to do virtually everything that you want from an X receiver. Now, the wide receiver, too, that I love the most is Mekhi Lemon, former 5-star out of USC. Out of him and Jacoby Lane, I lean towards Mekhi Lemon. Mekhi Lemon is lightning in a bottle. The dude is just pure athleticism, and he plays bigger than his size. His routes are incredible. I would argue he's probably the best route runner in his class. There's plenty of other great guys like Carnell Tate, who this wide receiver class in general, I think, is vastly underrated. I think there's going to be plenty of 1,000-yard wide receivers or all-purpose yard wide receivers within this class. Jordan Tyson also being a fantastic route runner as well. But Mekhi Lemon, man, he's like a juice Doug Baldwin. He just plays bigger than his frame, incredible routes, is able to go get the ball, and if you get him out in space, it could be a touchdown. I think he is incredible. Like, you could compare him to Zay Flowers if you wanted to. I think Mekhi Lemon is going to be a steal for whatever team gets him, more than likely in the later half of the first round, just solely off of his size. And frankly, I don't care. Go get me a good ball player. At tight end is a draft darling for many people, Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. This is a do-it-all tight end. I think the hype with him has slowly backed off. I mean, I've seen mock drafts put him at top 5. I don't see a tight end going in the top 5, but this is a dude that is an incredible athlete, can make a ton of different plays in the space, a nuanced route runner. He's one of those guys that has just bursted onto the scene as the tight end group going into the season was seen as wide open in terms of who is going to really take over that position group. We thought potentially a guy like Eli Stowers and many others, but I think Kenyon Sadiq has firmly become the number one tight end in this class. I think he's going to test well, and I think he is going to be the first tight end off the board. For offensive tackle, Spencer Fanu is just remarkable in his tape. If you want to go get teach tape, true, understand what it means to be an offensive tackle that can go maul a guy in run blocking, go watch his tape. It is art. It is cinema. If you are someone that enjoys watching good football, Spencer Fanu out in space is an incredible work of art in terms of offensive lineman. And I think he is the safest floor. I think you could potentially bump him into guard if you need him to. Now, there's some incredibly large offensive tackles in this class. I mean, we're talking Francis Mauigoa. You could throw in the kid out at Caden Proctor, and Caden Proctor is ridiculous, but I worry they could potentially be like an Evan Neal clone. I think Spencer Fanu is a safe pick, and he's going to be a top 10 selection. And then interior offensive lineman, I'm with Caden Green out of Mizzou. Hyper athletic, physical, especially in the interior. I think the interior, you could think of Connor Liu as well out of Auburn. There's a couple of different guys. I know there's a Penn State kid that I have not been able to watch up to this point. I think the interior, there's some offensive tackles that could bump into the interior. It's going to be a very flexible draft in terms of guys that could be potentially bumped to the inside for the NFL draft. But just to run things through, My number one quarterback is Ty Simpson. My running back 1 is going to be Jeremiah Smith. Wide receiver 1 is Jordan Tyson. Wide receiver 2 is Mekhi Lemon. Tight end is going to be Kenyon Sadiq. Offensive tackle is going to be Spencer Fanu. And interior offensive lineman is going to be Caden Green. I love doing the NFL draft, man. I do. I think the NFL draft is one of the more underrated times for NFL and college football to almost mesh together. You get guys that are asking, well, how did we not know about this guy? How is he not being talked about? While college fans are telling you we've been watching him for years at this point. We knew he was going to be good. Duh. That's probably going to happen with Zachariah Branch when he runs like a 4.2 on the 40-yard dash. Is Texas going to be eliminated from the college football playoff? Is Diego Pavia going to do it? Is he going to be the one that finally kills the dragon? The head is taken off the snake. We do not have to talk about Texas for the rest of the year. 11 a.m. kick in DKR Stadium. Let's talk about it. I have 3 main questions for this game. 3 questions that I think, depending on how you answer them, shows me how you feel or how you think this game is going to go. Number 1, can Texas be efficient on the offensive side of the ball if it becomes a Vanderbilt game? Little asterisk right there. If it becomes a Vanderbilt game. And what does that mean? Well, Vanderbilt and their style of play, kind of very similar to Texas last year, where Texas would get a lead and it felt like more than 10 points, but it was just 10 points, but it felt like 21, and they could almost suffocate you because of how good their defense was while their offense kind of sputtered out. Not in the same exact way, but Vanderbilt, when they're able to pull off these 7, 8, 9-minute drives, and you get back on the field, you go for a 3 and out, and then you see another 7, 8, 9-minute drive or 10, 12 play drive. Takes the air out of the ball. And if it becomes a Vanderbilt game where your possessions become limited, Diego Pavia is just continuously at least getting 3, 4, 5 yards, maybe pops off a 25-yard run here. You know, what is Texas's offense able to put out, and can it be consistent? You know, are they going to score on the first and the last drive, but nothing in between? Is it going to be sporadic? You know, what is that offense going to look like if they're not able to be any kind of level of consistency in a Vanderbilt style of game? And I think to that point, my next question number 2 would be, can Texas in any form have a consistent rushing attack? I don't know why it doesn't get talked about more often than it does, because everyone wants to talk, I guess, about Arch Manning and the quarterback position and the wide receivers. But when Texas is able to run the ball, they win the game. If they're not able to run the ball, they lose the game. Now, in the rare instance that they aren't able to run the ball and they win the game, it's mainly because they get a special teams play, which has been happening, 3 weeks in a row now? I think it's Kentucky there was a play. Mississippi State there was a play. Oh, I know there was a play in Oklahoma. You know, maybe just punt the ball out of bounds, because Ryan Niblett is already getting a statue in Austin. He already is. And they will find a way to get him the ball because he's just been the best playmaker on special teams easily. And you could maybe argue on the offensive side of the ball at this point. But all of that is a moot point if they are able to run the ball with Wisner. I believe Baxter's finally healthy. And I just don't think their offensive line has played well enough for them to allow for the rushing attack to be consistent enough. And I wonder, is that going to go in hand with what we were talking about with the efficiency on the offensive side of the ball? But we'll get to that here in a moment. The last question I have is there going to be a breaking point for Vanderbilt? Vandy's a talented team. They are. You have Pavia. The offensive line's played great. I think there's some talented weapons on the outside, but the depth that Texas brings outmatches 90% of the country, Vandy included, in terms of the talent rosters that there is. And sometimes when you have a talent roster of Texas's size going against a Vandy that is talented, but there's a gap between the two, it could be close for 3.5 quarters, but there's a moment where it breaks off. And this offensive line and their size, or the defensive line and their size, is able to lean on you. And I get a little worried about that with Vanderbilt. And I think it's fair for me to say, before I answer these questions, we do not know if Arch Manning is going to play. It could be Matthew Caldwell or Arch Manning. Arch Manning currently in concussion protocol and apparently getting pulled over. If you do not know what I'm talking about, go check Twitter. But I don't think it changes what I'm about to say, because it's not like Arch Manning has brought any kind of continuity or consistency from the quarterback position. So volatility is more of the same right now. Do I think Texas can be efficient on the offensive side of the ball if it is a Vanderbilt style type of game? No. Do I think Texas is going to be able to run the ball efficiently or even consistently? No. Do I think Vanderbilt could break if we get to late fourth quarter and it's a close game and Texas's talent just finally overwhelms them? Potentially, but I think Vanderbilt finds a way to win this game. Texas is playing with fire. They've been playing with fire. I mean, at the end of the day, you're playing with fire against, Kentucky and Mississippi State, but those are two programs and two teams that find ways to lose. Kentucky at the goal line in overtime, ran the third time in a row up the middle against that stout Texas defense and made mistakes, shot themselves in the foot, found a way to lose that game. Mississippi State found a way to lose that game, running hurry up, kicking it to Niblet, all the different factors. They found a way to lose. That's what they've been doing all year. They did it against Florida. They did it against Tennessee. Those are two programs that find a way to lose, and Vanderbilt is a program and a team that finds a way to win. I think Texas' defense is going to present a lot of challenges, but the way that Vanderbilt plays the offensive side of the ball kind of mitigates some of those challenges. You're going to need a masterclass from, I think, Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill if you were to win this game. And you're going to need to be able to run the ball. You're at home. Texas needs this more than Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt could take this loss and still have a very good chance to go make the college football playoff. They would still, I believe, have Tennessee at the end of the year, and that could be for a college football playoff spot, depending on Tennessee, Oklahoma, which we'll preview on Thursday. I'm trusting Vanderbilt in this spot to find a way to win and to knock off Texas. Is it wishful thinking? Partially. But I think Vanderbilt does it. Is it time to panic about Penn State? Now, you may ask, well, you've already fired James Franklin. We've already panicked. We've already sent the bad guy. He's gone. Third largest buyout in college football history. And we're coming up on time for the show, but I wanted to make sure I got this in. Make sure that this was going to be something that's discussed now, because it's more, I'm planting the seed for a later conversation. And we're already seeing it sprout just a little bit. Penn State made their firing with the intention of going from 10-2 to a national champion. Are we confident that they're going to be able to make the right hire to go find a guy, or is there going to be someone out there that can actually make the difference? I threw out Kurt Cignetti. He goes and gets an extension. And at the time of that firing, because it was the first domino to fall, it was the first one to go down, Florida still had Billy Napier. LSU still had Brian Kelly. Auburn still has Hugh Freeze, and that's even the same case today. And Texas still has Sarkisian. That's the case today, obviously, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's some reported interest in the NFL. And as we get further along into the college football season, Penn State keeps falling a little bit lower on the totem pole in terms of priority for these coaching candidates. And we could even make the argument that, say, for example, Dan Lanning goes from Oregon to LSU. Oregon is still a better job than Penn State. We still have them going. And when you look at the totem pole. Obviously, you have Florida with the urgency of wanting to rebuild and go to a national championship. LSU, very similar. They have not been to a college football playoff in a very long time. But with Penn State, the intention was you were 10-2 and you weren't making a national championship run, but we need to find the guy that can take that and move us to a national championship. Mind you, you're going to lose Drew Aller, 2 running backs, a bunch of defensive players. And your options, as of right now, from what it looks like, Matt Rule and Manny Diaz. Now, pause before you start typing and before you say, oh my gosh, he's already disrespecting our potential future head coach. I like Matt Rule. And I think Manny Diaz is a fine ball coach. Now, this is a safe place. I want to just ask a question. I'm not giving my opinion here because there is a world where they hire either of those guys and they end up going for a national championship run. Completely understand that. Do you feel confident in that? Do you? I don't know if I do. There's my opinion, if you needed it. Because I remember at the beginning of the search, there was rumors, oh, we could potentially go get a Marcus Freeman. Well, Marcus Freeman, if he's going to leave, is going to go to LSU. All right, well, what's the next option? Kurt Signetti? Nope. He just did a contract extension with Indiana. What I worry for Penn State is they fired without a plan. Now, they did it early enough to where now they can build a plan, but I don't know if what they are building is going to be something that you can feel confident is going to work out. It's a risky move, what they did. A very risky move. And I don't know if it's going to work out for them. This might be calling an egg white or the sky is blue or the grass is green. But as we get further and further into this, you know, and Penn State doesn't get talked about as much, it's just like, oh yeah, that's Penn State. They go play Ohio State this weekend. You know, their season's done. We'll find out who their coach is in a couple months. What I worry about is because there's so many coaching opportunities that become available, and those opportunities have the leverage and the ability to go pull from large organizations, and those large organizations are not going to have a coach. And then it just keeps Penn State down the totem pole to where you sit around and you say, well, we need to go get a guy that wants Penn State. And then you look at Manny Diaz and you look at Matt Rule, and we just go in a circle of, do we feel confident that those are going to be the guys? I don't know. And obviously you and I both don't know, but it's more of a, I'm not confident. Like, I'm not confident that either of those guys are going to work out if those are the options that you go with. Well, that will wrap it up for us. This is the Stadium Pulse, ladies and gentlemen, built and powered by Crutchman Media. We do fantastic work around here. It is just in its infancy. If you want NBA, NFL content, go check the channels tab on the Stadium Pulse. But if you like college football, there is a big red button that can get you more college football content. And that's the only thing I'm going to ask from you is just slide the mouse or your thumb if you're watching on your phone. Just click it, man. It would mean the world to me. I'm going to keep it simple, stupid. With that in mind, guys, thank you guys so much for watching the Stadium Pulse. I will see you guys next time, Thursday, when we start breaking down the full slate of college football.